Sahana vavatu, sahana bhunaktu, sahaviryan karavavahai, tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti 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 Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Chaiva Tato Jayamudirayet. Good. Welcome back. Excuse me. We are in the midst of the Vyadha Gita, which is a section of the third book of the Mahabharata, the Vyadha Parva. And in this section, goes on maybe a dozen chapters, I forget. And in this section, we have a very unusual character in the role of guru. In fact, nice, we just saw in the, those of you who were here earlier for our chanting, we saw Shankaracharya in his Manisha Panchakam saying whoever it is, whether even if he's a Chandala, if he knows Brahman personally, he's fit to be my guru. Shankara said that in the Manisha Panchakam. So in this section of the Mahabharata, our guru is a butcher, chopping up animals and selling these animal parts to people for their food. And also in ancient times, Vyadha was also belonged to a particular caste, Shudra, the lowest of the four castes. So a very unlikely person to be a guru to a very pious Brahmana who is asking the Vyadha various questions. But it turns out this Vyadha is endowed with extraordinary wisdom. In our prior chapters, we saw the Vyadha discoursing on dharma, in particular swadharma. What is your personal responsibility? We concluded that in our last class. Today, we begin a new section. So we're still in the Vyadha Parva. By the way, how many names? Vyadha Parva, Vyadha Parva, Aranya Parva, Aranya Parva. Any of those four are fine. So in this, they all mean the same thing. It's the third book of the Mahabharata. One of the longest books, as we commented before, because they're in the forest for so many years. So we continue. But the current chapter deals with karma and moksha. I'd like to give an introduction to this before we see the verses. There's a very important distinction in how people envision the goal of spiritual life. For example, if you talk to your Christian friends, they'll tell you that the goal of spiritual life is what? To go to heaven. Your Jewish friends will say the same thing. Your Muslim friends will say the same thing. They may use different language, or to go to paradise, another word for heaven. Is that really the ultimate goal? In fact, let me make an observation about this. If heaven is the goal, so we're asking, our topic is, what is the goal of spiritual life? If the goal is heaven, the question is, how do you know that your religious tradition is actually valid and can take you to heaven? So if you're practicing Christian, how do you know if Christianity is a valid path to get to heaven? If you're practicing Jew or Muslim, how do you know that your religious system is valid and works and will in fact take you to heaven? And the answer to that question is you have to wait and find out. Because heaven is a goal that is gained only after this life, which means it is purely a matter of belief, or to use my guru's language, you have no way of validating So we'll say no validation. In this life, you can't validate that goal. By the way, it's important to note that many Hindus ascribe to a similar belief. Many Hindus also believe that the goal of spiritual growth is to go to heaven. Of course, those Hindus who believe that haven't studied the scriptures completely, because even in the Bhagavad Gita, it says that you get to heaven as a result of your good karmas which are finite or infinite? Finite. And finite karmas might take you to heaven for how long? Finite. Which means you get to enjoy a lifetime in heaven, and then you get born again. So, from a Hindus also accept the existence of heaven, but Hindu concept of heaven is very different. It cannot be the ultimate goal of spiritual life. At best, it can be, pardon me for being a little facetious, it can be a nice holiday. As you go from life to life to life to life, let's take a holiday and take one life in heaven. Now, this is in stark contrast to the goal as envisioned in Vedanta. The goal, if we want to use Sanskrit words, we can use words like Swarga for heaven and Moksha, meaning liberation, meaning enlightenment, for the goal as we envision it in the teachings of Vedanta. Now, this is so completely different because Vedanta holds and teaches that you can gain moksha. If moksha means liberation, one of the meanings of liberation is liberation here and now. Liberation means freedom. Freedom here and now. Freedom from suffering. So freedom from suffering is the immediate goal of the teachings of Vedanta, and freedom from suffering is something that can be validated. Which is to say, how do you know the teachings of Vedanta work? Try it and find out now, in this life. You don't have to wait till your next life. You can find out now in this life. Just a side comment here. Suppose the teachings of Vedanta didn't work, and so many people really, really tried and were unable to validate it. If that were the case, do you think there'd be so many people teaching and studying Vedanta today? Doesn't that seem horribly unlikely? If Vedanta had been invalidated again and again and again over the centuries, it would have gone away completely. Like, for example, there's just funny metaphor. 100 years ago in Europe, they taught phrenology. Do you know what is phrenology? A guy would feel the bumps on your head, and based on the bumps of your head, he would tell you about your psychological problems. Phrenology. Do we still practice phrenology today? Why? It doesn't work. So if Vedanta were like phrenology, it would have been disproven long ago and it would cease to have existed. So there are many who have validated these teachings and can establish that. Finally, how? What is the means by which you go to heaven, or the means by which you get moksha? And here, this is one last part of the introduction, but a very important part. How does a Hindu get to Swarga? The answer is karma. And karmas, as we just noticed, are finite, limited. So at best, karma can get you a lifetime in heaven, nothing permanent. We should note here that our Christian friends have a very different concept. In fact, it was Martin Luther, just to give you a little background, Martin Luther who said karma has absolutely no role whatsoever in getting to heaven. That was one of his main teachings. Martin Luther was the one who initiated the great reform in the Roman Catholic Church. Well, you heard of the Reformation. The Reformation was initiated by Martin Luther about 400 or 500 years ago. And up to that time, Christians also felt that karma, good, pious deeds, could help you get to heaven. Martin Luther said, nope. He said it is faith and faith alone that gets you to heaven. Now, in either case, whether it is the faith of a Christian or the karma of a Hindu, how do you know if heaven even exists? How do you validate that faith can get you to heaven? How do you validate that good works, karma, can get you to heaven? Once again, you have to die to find out. There's no way of validating. On the other hand, moksha is gained through, we use a Sanskrit word, jnana, knowledge. By gaining knowledge of your already existent divine nature, one gains moksha. Knowledge of an already existent truth. A truth of yourself that's already true here and now, but has yet to be discovered. If you discover that you're already divine, you discover that you were divine before you were born. You discover that the divinity continues after the death of your body. This is moksha. What a radically different way of understanding the goal of spiritual life. This is so crucial, so important, and that's what this chapter is about. Anyway, I went on with the introduction longer than I intended, so let us turn to the teachings of Vyadha. Vyadha is the butcher, and he's giving this discourse to the Brahmana. And Vyadha giving the discourse to the Brahmana, all of this is being narrated, of course, by the sage Vaishampayana. Anyway, that's a bigger story. Anyway, let's see what our butcher has to say. Vyadho vacha, Vyadho, yat karot yashubham karma, yat karot yashubham, shubham vadvaja sattama, shubham vadvaja sat. Avashyam tat samapnoti, avashyam tat samapno, purusho natra samshayaha, purusho natra. In the second line, Dvija Sattama. O great Dvija, O great twice-born, the Vyadha very respectfully addresses the Brahmana who went to meet Vyadha in Mithila. Remember that story? We won't go back to that story. So the Brahmana was directed to go to Mithila to meet this Vyadha for the sake of spiritual instruction, and the Vyadha addresses him very respectfully. O Brahmana, Dvija Sattama, yat karoti, whatever a person does. What does a person do? Karma. Karma karoti. Please remember that the fundamental meaning of the word karma is action. Deed. Only indirectly, when you talk about my karma, you're not really talking about your karma at all. You're talking about your karma phala. You're talking about the results of your past deeds. We use that term very informally. You understand that. So here the word karma is used in the true sense of the word. Yat karoti karma, whatever action or deed a person does, whether that deed is shubham, whether it is a pious dharmic deed, ashubham va, or it is not pious, it is adharmic, whether that deed is pious or not, whether that deed follows dharma or not. Avashyam, most certainly, tat samapnoti. Tat karma phala, the results of that karma, samapnoti, a person will certainly get. Who will get it? Purushaha, a person, will certainly gain the results of that action. We've discussed the doctrine of karma in great length, and one of the wonderful things about this Mahabharata has been able to study sections that have described the doctrine of karma. So we've seen in great length, we won't discuss it further here, that your deeds produce two kinds of phala. Remember this discussion? Your deeds produce drishta phala, immediate seen results, and adrishta phala, deferred results which do not take place in the present moment. Those results will accrue to you at some time in the future, either later in this life, or if not in a future life. Na atra samshayaha, with regard to these two kinds of results, atra na samshayaha, there is no doubt. There is no doubt that our karmas produce results both now in this life and in future lives. This is a review of what we've already seen. Yatha sambrata sambharaha, yatha sambrata punareva prajayate, punareva shubhakrit shubha yonishu, shubha yonish, papakrit papa yonishu, papakrit papa. Yatha, according to Sambrita sambharaha. Sambhara is accumulation. Sambrita of what you've accumulated. How's that? An accumulation of what you've accumulated. Sounds good in Sanskrit. Doesn't sound good in English. What it's referring to is your prarabdha karma. Several classes ago, we had that long discussion about prarabdha karma, sanchita karma, agami karma. I'll presume most of you attended those classes, so we need not go through all the details. So, yatha sambrita sambharaha, according to your... actually here, this really refers not to prarabdha karma, it really refers to sanchita karma in the context of this verse. Sanchita karma are those karmas that you've accumulated over all of your prior births. How many times have you been born again? We talk about samsara as being a cycle. So you go through a cycle, birth, death, rebirth, death, rebirth, death, rebirth. Somebody made that joke, the Hindu bumper sticker. The Christian bumper sticker is born again, right? The Hindu bumper sticker is born again and again and again and again. It's a long bumper sticker. So if that describes a cycle, how many times around that loop? In the computer world, they have a very nice expression. They call it an infinite loop. When your program gets into trouble and it gets stuck, they call that an infinite loop. If, again, this is review, we don't want to go over all the details. We've seen it in great elaboration in our prior classes. But we've established how you have had an infinite number of prior lives. It's easy to establish. We won't take the time to do it now. In an infinite number of prior lives, how much karma have you accumulated? An infinite amount of karma. The good news is you've accumulated an infinite amount of good karma. The bad news is you've accumulated an infinite amount of bad karma. Now, this life cannot be the result of an infinite amount of karma. If this life were the result of an infinite amount of karma, you'd have to live how long to fructify, to live out, to experience all that karma? So, this life is a result of a finite amount of karma. Sanchita karma is the accumulation of infinite karmas from infinite prior lives, but what gives rise to this life is called prarabdha karma. Now, he says here, yatha sambrita sambharaha, according to your Sanchita karmas, punaha eva prajayate. One gets born again and again. Punaha, again. One gets born again and again. Why? Because of this infinite amount of accumulated karma, sanchita karma. Here, sambrita sambharaha. But as we said, this life can't be the result of infinite karma. So he says, Shubha krit, Shubha yoni shu. Due to prarabdha karma, Shubha krit, due to the good deeds that you have done that come to your prarabdha karma, Shubha yoni shu. Shubha, due to grammatical changes, the word is shubha. Shubha yoni shu, you get born into a blessed life, a wonderful life. So due to the good karmas, if good karmas come into your prarabdha karma, you are blessed with a good life. On the other hand, papakrit, if papa karmas, if the results of your past adharmic actions come into your prarabdha karma, then you are born into papa yonishu, you're born into a life of suffering and misery. This merely restates what we've already discussed in prior classes, but let's just make one observation here. Suppose somebody says, if I really work hard at collecting good karmas, doing good deeds and accumulating punya karma, suppose I live an extraordinarily pious life and I accumulate a lot of good karma. The question is, will that guarantee you that your next life or number of lives will be Shubha Yoni, will be blessed lives? Or is it possible that no matter how many good deeds you do in this life, is it not possible that your next life could still be Papa Yoni, could still be a life of misery and suffering? Again, we went through that relationship between prarabdha karma and sanchita karma in great length in a prior class. We won't redo all of that discussion, but that's what we understand from the teachings of karma. No matter how many good deeds you accomplish in this life, there's no guarantee you will receive the results of those good deeds. There's no guarantee you'll receive the results in this life, no guarantee in immediately next life, no guarantee in the next 10 or 100 lives. Eventually you'll get those results, but there's no guarantee when and how, which really shows the defect of the thinking that I should live a pious life purely for the sake of accumulating good karmas, for the sake of going to heaven. It's a very simplistic, naive kind of thinking, which in Vedanta we reject that completely. So, having seen this little review, now we go into the subject matter of this chapter. Tato nivritta bandhatvat, tato nivritta bandhat karmanamudayadapi karmanamudayad parikramati samsare chakravad bahuvedanaha chakravad bahuve tataha. Therefore, that squiggly line means an had gone away. Nivritta bandhanat. Because bandha, bondage. Anivritta bandha, bondage which has not been removed. Bondage. Why are we talking about bondage? Well, going back to that computer metaphor, have you ever been frustrated sitting in front of your computer and you punch all the buttons, nothing happens, Control-Alt-Delete, nothing happens, whatever you do, nothing happens. And the reason nothing happens is your computer is in a state of bondage. What is that state of bondage? It's called in computer language, they call it an infinite loop, which means your computer is busy doing something stupid over and over and over again. And it's so busy doing that, it doesn't have enough time to respond to you pressing Control-Alt-Delete. That's exactly what happens. So it's stuck. It's trapped in this loop. Your computer is in a state of bondage. Trapped in a loop. Are we trapped in a loop? Yeah. There is a metaphor. You're trapped in a loop. Do you know, if you could organize it so that every time you got born, it was wonderful. If there were a way of organizing that, we could dismiss this class and stop worrying about Vedanta entirely, because there'd be absolutely no need for Vedanta if it were possible to have a continued process of rebirth in which every birth was wonderful and great and glorious, but for all the reasons we just discussed, it's not possible. In every life, there's going to be, being born again and again and again, you are in a state of bondage. You are guaranteed to suffer. Suffering is guaranteed. If not in the next life, then in the life after that. And virtually in most or all, in fact, in any life short of heaven, suffering is guaranteed. Which means the vast majority of lives include what? Suffering, a lot of suffering. So, this is bondage. Anivritta bandhanat, due to the bandhatvat, due to the non-cessation of bondage, due to the continuation of bondage, what happens? Karmanam udayat. What happens is your karmas continue to fructify. Udaya, fructification. Udayat, due to the continuing fructification, karmanam, of your past actions, you continue to get born and again, just as your computer is stuck in that loop, in a state of bondage. In the same way, due to our past karmas, we are stuck in a loop, and that loop is driven by how much karma, how much Sanchita karma is accumulated? Infinite Sanchita karma. How long will you be stuck in this loop? Potentially a limitless amount of time, as long as anivritta bandhatva, as long as the bondage is not severed. Now, we can introduce some very important Vedantic teachings. The Vyadha doesn't go into a great deal of detail here. We can add a little bit. Bondage is for whom? Very good question. Bondage is for whom? Bondage to a life of suffering is for whom? Bondage to a life of suffering is karma pala. The result of karma belong to whom? We've had this discussion. The results of karma belong to the person who did the karma. The doer of karma reaps the results of karma. Pretty obvious, right? The performer of karma, in Sanskrit, karma karta, the agent of karma. The karma karta, the agent of karma, the doer of an action, is karma pala bhokta, the one who receives the results of action. That being so, how do we get nibandhana, how do we get nivritta bandha? How do we break out of this cycle of bondage? Notice the agent of action owns an infinite amount of karma. Can you exhaust an infinite amount of karma? What would it take to exhaust an infinite amount of karma? That's not a reasonable way to become free from karma. What is the Vedantic solution? The Vedantic solution is radical, a radical solution. And that is, suppose we can remove the one who did the action. The results belong to, let me put the link, we need a couple of words. We said that karma phala, the results of action, which include being born an infinite number of times, the results of action belong to whom? They belong to the karma karta. Karta means agent. The results of action belong to the agent of action. There's an infinite amount of results pending, Sanchita karma, and that all belongs to the karma karta. How do you get rid of all this karma? By exhausting it, by experiencing it. Through the experiences we have in life. Through happy experiences, we exhaust punya karma. Through suffering, we exhaust papa karma. You all understand that part. Then how do we get free of an infinite amount of karma? The Vedantic solution is radical. Get rid of that fellow. Wait a minute. That fellow is me. We have to discuss this a little bit. First of all, here's the reasoning. In fact, I made this up long ago. It's kind of a clever way. Bill Gates owns tens of billions of dollars. Suppose Bill Gates billions of dollars represents your infinite Sanchita karma. Suppose Bill Gates wants to give away all of his money, which he does, by the way. He's already set up a foundation to give away all of that money to charity. But suppose he's got a bad plan. What would be a bad plan? Every day he's going to write out a check for $1 million. We're thinking, that's a good plan. Every day he writes out a check for $1 million. That's pretty cool. Well, so suppose he does it all year round. He writes $365 million worth. Next year he writes another $365 million worth. How many years does he have to do that in order to exhaust his wealth of $40 or $50 billion? He'd have to live about another 150 years. At $1 million a day, he'd have to live 150 years, or I'm guessing, you work out the numbers for yourself, he'd have to live a long time at $1 million a day to get rid of his entire wealth. So that's the idea, that in order to get rid of an infinite amount of Sanchita karma, how long do you have to live? Infinite amount of time. It's a bad strategy. So what is the best way for Mr. Gates to get rid of his money? He's smart. What he has done is he's created a foundation. When he dies, all of the money goes to his foundation. And the foundation then distributes the money. The point is, when Mr. Gates dies, I hope he lives a long life, but when his life comes to an end, what happens to his ownership of all that money? That's the point. When he dies, he loses ownership of all. The money continues to exist, but he loses ownership. Here's the point. You possess an infinite amount of papa karma. How do you get rid of it? If the one who did all those papa karma, if we can get rid of that one, then you get rid of all the karma. But now that leads us to this real heavy question. What does it mean to get rid of the one who did all those karmas? We're talking about you. We're talking about the one sitting in your seat. Wait a minute. The one sitting in your seat is a physical body. Is that physical body all you are? Are you the physical body? There's a relationship, no doubt, But who you are is independent of that physical body. You know that every night when you dream. In dream, you continue to exist, but your physical body is completely out of the picture. So, in some sense, you are independent of your physical body. In the teachings of Vedanta, we establish, and we're not going to spend a lot of time on this, it would be nice to get back to this chapter, but we can very easily establish that who you are is independent not only of your physical body, who you are is independent of your mind. Wow, independent of your mind. What does that mean? Do you know what you're thinking right now? Do you know what your mind is doing right now? Yes. So to know what your mind is doing means you are the knower of the mind. Tell me, when you are a knower and the mind is a known, doesn't that make you different? You know, if I'm the knower of my glasses, the glasses are known, I am the knower, wouldn't it be silly to say I am glasses? When glasses are known to me, that establishes my independence, my separateness from my glasses. Just as glasses are known, isn't your mind known? You are independent of your mind. Then, who are you? And this is the part we have to just do very quickly so we can come back to our chapter. But the whole teachings of Vedanta culminate in the recognition that who you are, Satchidananda Atma, unchanging, uncreated consciousness. How's that? Unchanging, uncreated consciousness, independent of your body and mind. And here's the final part of our story. Who did those papa karmas? And this is really tricky. Did your body do those papa karmas? Wait a minute, your body is like a tool. It's like a hammer. So if you're using a hammer and you smash your thumb, do you blame the hammer? You might, but but it would be pretty foolish, wouldn't it? So the hammer is a tool. In the same way, our bodies are a tool. Then, who did all those papa karmas, those bad karmas? You say, oh, my mind did. But you know, just as your body is a tool, in some sense your mind is also a tool, is it not? It's a thing. In fact, in Vedanta, we say that the mind is just another inert thing, like your body. What is the difference? Your body is made of physical elements. Your mind is made of subtle elements. Your body is made of physical elements, sthula bhutas. Your mind is made of subtle elements, sukshma bhutas. The point is that physical elements are inert. Subtle elements are inert, like the hammer. So the hammer, being an insentient thing, can't do anything on its own. Your body, like the hammer, is an insentient thing. It can't do anything on its own. Your mind, in and of itself, is an insentient thing. It can't do anything on its own. By the way, if it's okay, we're going to set the chapter aside. We've just come to one of the most important teachings of Vedanta. Give me the permission to unfold this properly. I don't want to rush through this point. It's a very important point. Your body is an inert thing. Like the hammer, it can't do anything on its own. Your mind is a thing. Is it known to you or not? It's known to you. It's a thing. It's not the same as your body. Why? It's not made of physical stuff. Your mind is made of non-physical stuff. Non-physical stuff means subtle elements. Subtle elements in Sanskrit, sukshma bhutas. But this non-physical stuff is still stuff. It's still inert. So just as your body is a bunch of inert stuff, can't do anything on its own, in the same way your mind is made of inert stuff, it can't do anything on its own. In fact, the only reason your mind does anything at all is because of your consciousness. Right? Only because of your consciousness can your mind function at all. What would your mind be like minus consciousness? What is that? Nothing. What is your body like minus life? You get the point. So the body has to be enlivened by prana. Your mind is enlivened by consciousness. Your body is inert stuff. Your mind is also inert stuff. Neither of them can do anything on their own. What are we doing? We're trying to find out pardon my colloquial language, who's the guy who committed all those bad karmas? Who do we blame for all those bad karmas? Who has, and not just bad karmas, good karmas too. Who is it that has accumulated all these karmas? Is it your body? Like the hammer? It can't be. Is it your mind? Your mind is also inert stuff. So who is the karma karta? Who is the agent of action? Not your body, not your mind. You with me so far? What's left? Consciousness. Consciousness is what? Try this word out. Knowingness. It's an awkward word, but try to get the sense of it. Knowingness. The fact that you can know anything at all. Your fundamental sentiency. Your existence as a awareful being. You are conscious of what's happening in your mind. You're conscious of what's happening out here in the room. That consciousness is the fundamental essence of who you are. That's what the ancient rishis called Sat Chit Ananda Atma. But here we want to focus on that consciousness. Here's the question. Is consciousness the karma karta? Is consciousness the agent of action? This is tricky. It's quite tricky. Recognize that consciousness reveals everything that happens in your mind. As we said before, whatever is happening in your mind is known to you. You are the consciousness which reveals whatever happens in your mind. You are the consciousness that allows your mind to work. We've already said that your mind is not the agent of action because your mind is an inert thing. Leading us to the final question, is your consciousness the agent of action? Tell me, to do an action, several things are involved. One is deciding to do the action, making an effort to do the action. Tell me, to decide to do an action, doesn't decision-making take place in your mind? In fact, when you make a decision, do you know you're making the decision or not? You know you're making the decision. Decision-making is an activity of your mind, is it not? And being an activity of your mind, it's known to you, consciousness, which means, does consciousness make the decision or does your mind? Who decided to come here to class today? Not consciousness. Consciousness revealed the decision-making process that went on in your mind. We cannot say consciousness makes a decision, nor does consciousness exert any effort. Isn't all effort taking place in your mind and body? Your body and mind are engaged in making effort, not consciousness. Consciousness, those of you who have attended enough of these classes, you know that consciousness doesn't do anything at all. As Sri Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, na karomi iti. He says, I don't do anything at all, Sri Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, speaking for that consciousness. He says, even while walking and talking, he says, and while seeing and hearing, he says, I don't do anything at all. Consciousness doesn't do anything at all. Consciousness reveals what takes place in your mind. Now, do you see we're in trouble? We said the body is not the karma karta, because it's an inert thing. The mind alone is not the karma karta, agent of action, because it's like the body, it's also an inert thing in and of itself. And we just established that consciousness in and of itself is not the karma karta, is not the agent of action. Consciousness reveals whatever is happening. In this wonderful text called Panchadashi, he gives a metaphor of a lamp on a stage. So imagine going to a play in ancient times. They watched dramas. Kalidasa dramas were famous. So imagine going to a drama in ancient times where there are no electric lights. They'd have a lamp, an oil lamp, on the stage, illuminating all the activities on the stage. So the metaphor he gives is that all the activities on the stage take place in the presence of the lamp, but the lamp doesn't do anything at all. In the same way, the activities of your mind take place in the presence of consciousness. You follow this wonderful metaphor. Just as that lamp illumines the stage and allows the actors to do their thing, in the same way, due to the presence of consciousness, your mind functions. But just as the lamp on the stage doesn't do anything, consciousness doesn't do anything. So, we have made ourselves completely stuck. Why are we completely stuck? We're trying to answer the question, who is this karma karta? We want to find that fellow and get rid of him because he's the one who owns this infinite amount of karma. But we're trying to find him and we're not doing very well. The body is not the karma karta, it's like the hammer. The mind is not the karma karta, it's like a subtle hammer. It's another inert thing. It's another tool, but it's still an inert thing. And now we just said that consciousness doesn't do anything. Where is the karma karta? 3 strikes and you're out. To use the American metaphor. Okay. A little bit of common sense. We just said, your mind in the presence of consciousness functions. Whew, I didn't think we were going to talk about what we're discussing are some of the most profound teachings of Vedanta. Just relax and pay attention. You'll see something remarkable in these teachings. I hadn't planned to do this, but this is where we are. This is good. What are we doing? We want to become free from the bondage to a life of birth after birth after birth. Or my guru said, that sounds too optimistic. To get born again and again and again. He says it's way too optimistic. It would be better to say you get to die again and again and again. Getting born again and again doesn't sound so bad. But dying again and again and again sounds fairly grim. You know what it is to die. So, how to get rid of that bondage to a life of dying again and again and again? We said we have to find the karma karta, the agent of action, and get rid of that fellow. Just as when Bill Gates dies, then he's freed from all of his money. In the same way, when we get rid of this fellow, we are freed from the bondage of karma, and now we're in trouble. Because we're trying to identify who is that agent of action, not the body, not the mind, and not even consciousness. Now here it comes. Suppose the agent of action was a little bit more complicated. Suppose it was something that happened when the mind and consciousness got together. First of all, there's something intuitive about that. We said your mind only functions in the presence of consciousness. So let's start by taking those two things together. Mind plus consciousness. So we're trying to find who is the agent of action, and now we're saying mind plus consciousness. But now even we have a problem. If the mind is not the agent of action, and if consciousness is not the agent of action, if you put them together, you still don't have an agent of action. It's like math, right? 0 plus 0 equals 0. So if the mind is not the agent of action, and if consciousness is not the agent of action, you bring them together, you still don't have an agent of action. But something amazing happens. This is what they call Maya. What is Maya? Consciousness comes together with mind. Mind comes together with consciousness. And in your mind is formed an idea. What idea? I am me. I am an agent of action. I am a capable person. We're talking about ego or ahankara. Not ego in the sense of pride, or ahankara in the sense of pride, in a very fundamental sense. Ego in the sense of I-ness, in the sense of being an agent. We're talking about a thought. The doer, here we finally get to answer the question. Who is the agent of action? Who did it? When something gets done, suppose you cooked a nice meal, and suppose I came to your home and I'm eating food, and I said, "This is really good. Who cooked this food?" And you say, "I did." All right? So whoever said "I did," I cooked the food, is the agent of action, correct? Who says "I did"? Did your body say it? Your body was an instrument used. Did your mind say it? Well, wait a minute. Your mind in the absence of consciousness is just another thing. Did consciousness say it? Wait a minute. Consciousness doesn't have a mouth and can't do anything. So then when you said, "I cooked the food," who said "I did it"? The one who said "I did it" is the one we call ego or ahankara, the individual self, the sense of individuality. I'll say that again. Sense of individuality. Self-concept. That self-concept is a nice term, actually. Self-concept. Self-concept is that sense of I am me. And who is it that said "I cooked the food"? That's self-concept. Now, watch this. When we say self-concept, first of all, self-concept means when you say I. That's the one you're referring to. I did it. The one who says "I did it" is a thought in your mind. Are you with? This is so subtle, but you can get it. When you say "I did it," is that statement, "I did it," is not from your body, it's not purely from your mind, it's not purely from consciousness, it's not even from mind and consciousness together, because in deep sleep, mind and consciousness are together, but nothing happens, right? In deep sleep, mind is present in a resolved condition, consciousness is present, nothing's happening. But here comes the Maya. When mind and consciousness are stuck together, something arises in your mind. What arises in your mind? You. You meaning what? Self-concept, ego, the sense of being a sentient, active, capable person. We call that one ahankara or ego. A moment ago I used the word self-concept. Self-concept is a concept. Is a concept a thing? A concept is not a thing. Your body is a thing. Your mind is a thing. Consciousness is a very real thing. What about self-concept? It's not a real thing. What did we just arrive at? The one who did the action is not a real thing. Are you following this? This is amazing. These are some of the most profound teachings of Advaita Vedanta. The one who commits an action, let me try some different language, is due to an illusory sense of being an individual person. An illusory sense of being an individual person. Body is a fact, mind is a fact, consciousness is a fact, But you put these together, and due to this Maya, we can talk about that more another time, there arises this illusory sense of being an independent, conscious person. Not consciousness, person, being, entity, individual. An illusory sense of being an individual being. The consequence of that statement is massive. I'll just hint briefly at it. Your consciousness is not individual. You've heard it said, there is one consciousness. One consciousness reflected in all of our minds. One consciousness, not many. But when you say, I am consciousness, when you say, I am a conscious being, try this. When you say, I am a conscious being, are you referring to that one consciousness? Do you feel like you are one? You are the same one consciousness present in all living beings? You probably don't feel like that. So when you say, I am a conscious being, you're not referring to the one consciousness. What are you referring to? This illusory sense of being an individual being. The Sanskrit term, ahankara, ego. Self-concept in English. And since it is concept, it's not real. And that one is the karma karta. We can finish this now. That self-concept is the agent of action, and that agent of action is not absolutely real, being self-concept. So if it's not absolutely real, it's pretty easy to destroy. And that's what Vedanta does. Vedanta is a means of knowledge that destroys ignorance, the ignorance because of which that illusory self-concept exists. Okay, I've gone way further with this than I intended. This is usually the kind of discussion we keep for our Tuesday Vedanta class, but it came in this text, and I think to skip over this, then the chapter won't be meaningful. So let's come back to the text a little bit here and see what's going on here. So he says in this verse, Tataha anivritta bandhatvat, because to the non-cessation of this bondage, and because of karmanam udayat, because of the continued fructification of karma, what happens? Parikramati. One continues to travel. Samsare. In this world, in life after life after life, or what would Puja Swamiji have said? You travel from death to death to death. You travel chakravat, just as if you're stuck in this loop, like your computer being stuck in that loop. Bahu vedanaha, this loop which consists of bahu, a lot of what? Vedana, here suffering. Being stuck in this loop which consists of a lot of suffering, you are stuck in that loop. Why? Because your ownership of the karma continues. Okay. I'll give you one. This is a metaphor. This is hard to explain. So let me give you one more metaphor. This is one I like. In fact, I like it because I made it up. Try this. Suppose you're dreaming. This really is very appropriate. By the way, we just finished a very heavy discussion, and if you found it a little bit heavy, This is the profundity of the teachings of Vedanta. But I want you to have more of a gut feeling for this topic. So let me share with you this particular metaphor, which will give you more of a gut feeling. Suppose you're having a dream. Not exactly a dream, more like a nightmare. And you're having this horrible argument with someone. And you're just getting angrier and angrier. And you're just blind with rage in the midst of this argument. And then you see at your side a gun. You pick up that gun, point it at the person, pull the trigger. You hear this huge bang. It's deafening. You see the person freeze. You see the impact point. You see blood start to saturate the person's dress. You see the person fall to the ground dead. You have just killed someone. What comes next in your dream? What comes next? Police arrive. They very politely inquire what has happened. You explain what transpired. So I didn't mean to do it, but it happened. They read you your rights. They put you in handcuffs. They take you to the police car. They take you to jail. You are booked into the jail. Next day you meet with your attorney, all of this stuff. It goes on for weeks and weeks. You have an initial hearing, and after a couple of months you stand before the judge and you plead guilty to involuntary manslaughter. You don't want to go to trial because it could be much worse, so you plead guilty to involuntary manslaughter. The judge sentences you to jail for 20 years. You then, in a few days later, you check into your new jail. It's a medium security facility. They have these fences around. You're stuck in your little 6-foot by 10-foot cell. You have your bed, you have the toilet and the sink, and there's not much left in your cell. You're sitting there on your bed asking yourself, why did I do that? Why did I? Next day you ask, why did I do that? Why did I do that? Next day, why did I do that? You're in that jail cell for 20 years asking you, why did I do that? Why did I do that? Why did I do that? And then you wake up. It's a dream. Now, when you wake up, what happened to that 20-year sentence? That 20-year sentence belongs to whom? The one who pulled the trigger. Who was the one who pulled the trigger? The dreamer. What happened when you woke up? What happened to the dreamer when you woke up? When you woke up, the dreamer ceased to exist. You're following this now, right? When you woke up, the dreamer ceased to exist. So what happened to the 20-year sentence? When the owner of the sentence ceases to exist, the sentence goes away. You get the metaphor? Dreamer. I used the term illusory sense of being an individual person. Just as the dreamer pulled the trigger, the dreamer killed the person, the dreamer got a 20-year sentence. In the same way, an illusory sense of being an individual person is the one who has committed an infinite amount of karma in an infinite amount of prior lives. And just as when the dreamer ceases to exist when you wake up, what happens to the infinite karmas? Gone. Suppose you could wake up, in a sense, to become free of that illusory sense of being an individual person. Jnana, knowledge, to wake up out of an illusion, to wake up out of ignorance. Suppose you could wake up out of this dream, metaphorically. This is not a dream, but imagine you could wake up out of this reality which includes an illusory sense of being an individual person. Suppose you wake up out of that illusion, and waking up out of that illusion, what happens to the agent of action? The agent of action ceases to exist. When that agent of action ceases to exist, who owns this infinite amount of karma phala, the Sanchita karma? There's no one to own it. This is how you become free from an infinite amount of karma phala. When you wake up out of this illusion, this waking illusion, can we call it that? You wake up out of this waking illusion, you see the falsity of that sense of being an individual person, that ego, that ahankara, with this knowledge that false agent of action is destroyed. With the destruction of the false agent of action, you are then freed from all this karma phala. This is nivritta bandha. This is how you become free from that bondage to that cycle. And we'll see the consequences of that in our next class. Thank you for your patience. You've just made it through one of the very profound, deep inquiries in Advaita Vedanta. We'll continue this in our next class. By the way, next classes will be more on back to the verses, a little less on this very heavy stuff. There'll be less of that in our couple of announcements. Tomorrow, Sunday, we have our question-answer satsang at 6:15. If the weather is nice, we'll sit outside in the garden. Please join us. Satsang tomorrow at 6:15. The next Saturday, we're celebrating Guru Purnima. Very important, especially this is the first Guru Purnima since Puja Swami Dayananda attained Mahasamadhi. So please plan on joining us next Saturday. So instead of our usual programs, we'll meet at 11 o'clock. We'll do some simple puja, some chanting. I'll have a nice discourse for the occasion. Then we'll have prasad. If you're coming, please bring a dish of food. There's a sign-up sheet over on the counter, and we really need all the spots filled out. Otherwise, our volunteers will freak out, so to speak. So please help out. Bring a dish of food. Sign up over there at the counter. Library will be open after class. We'll conclude with our prayers. Om Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinaha Sarve Santu Niramayaha Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu Ma Kaschid Dukkha Bhag Bhavet Asato Ma Sadgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritangamaya. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Tat Sat.